where Donald Trump is at the moment. He is hunkered down, as people are saying, at Trump Towers, and security has been tightened there in New York's Manhattan, as the former United States President Donald Trump is expected to appear in court to face criminal charges. Now, Trump was indicted by the Manhattan grand jury last week on charges relating to a payment made to an adult movie star before the 2016 elections. Now, he recently announced his running for the 2024 presidential campaign and is the current or the first current or former U.S. president to be indicted. Well, to talk more about this matter and to talk about former President Donald Trump's political future, we are joined by the Daily Maverick's associate editor, Brooks Spector. Great to have you with us, Brooks. Thanks so much for your time.
Good morning. I suspect this is the first of a number of conversations because he's facing a whole series of legal challenges over the next while, in and among his time with his campaign.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is quite a big moment in history for the U.S. and, of course, for former President Donald Trump. So let's start right at the beginning, because he arrived in New York yesterday from the Mar-a-Lago estate and is expected to appear in court later on today. What is the magnitude of these charges? Because some look at it and say, that's not bad, what he's done. I mean, it is bad, but compared to other things, is this really bad? Talk to us about these charges.
Well, I mean, the challenge for the district attorney has not been to make the case that he gave hush money or a payment and a non-disclosure agreement with, as you so politely said, an adult film star. But that the monies that were used in this process ultimately were fraudulently charged in the bookkeeping of the Trump presidential campaign and so indicated to be campaign contributions. While paying money to somebody to keep their mouth shut is not a crime, claiming falsely that that is a campaign contribution is. And the challenge on the district attorney then is to link all these pieces together in a long chain and say, that's the problem. Now, you have to put that in the context as well, that this happened, the payments and the arrangements happened just before the 2016 presidential election, and arguably could have altered the outcome of the election, because the embarrassment or the illegality factor alone might have tipped the scales the other way. It was a close election, remember? And that hanging over the former president also are a number of other problems. One is the rather blatant effort to get the state of Georgia's senior elected elections official to go out and, quote unquote, find me 11,000 more votes, close quotes. That's tantamount to saying, let's fraudulently count the vote. And that's a federal charge. And then also the Justice Department appointed a special prosecutor to look at two other questions. One was the role of Donald Trump in encouraging or inciting the mob to go try to seize the Capitol building and change the vote, the certification for the election in January 21, January 6th, and also the question of the obstruction of justice in holding on to and hiding a whole range of secret government documents on his private property, which is also a crime. And so if the one happens, that is, today's process begins, the others will follow in some way, shape, or form. And all the way through the year, Donald Trump will be facing, he and his lawyers will be facing a whole series of potential criminal prosecutions. That's the real significance, I think, for Donald Trump, because that makes it rather harder to campaign for the presidency.
Does it? Because some people are saying that this could actually enhance his campaigning for the presidency. I mean, let's talk about that. Is this, I mean, would he'll still be able to, I suppose, campaign after this? Because, well, I suppose it depends on what happens when we talk to these criminal charges.
Well, I mean, let's be clear. The Constitution sets out the requirements for someone to become president. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you can't be a felon, or that you can't even be in jail, for that matter, or be under investigation, or be in the midst of a trial. You have to be a native-born citizen. You have to have resided continuously in the U.S. for 14 years, and you have to be over the age of 35. All of those rather simple criteria Donald Trump meets. But to your question of whether this ongoing criminal proceeding would hurt or enhance his circumstances, it's clear that he is intent on painting himself as a victim of some vast conspiracy to take away his right to be president, to take away his right to campaign for the presidency, and to be the man he is. There are other people who say, yes, a number of people will support him regardless, but it is entirely possible that people will just be heartily sick of this whole process, and among Republicans, at the minimum, begin to look for another voice, a different person, someone who isn't bound up inextricably from all these criminal proceedings and the chaos that wraps itself around Donald Trump. It's really hard to tell which way it's going to go. You're quite right. It could swing one way, and it could well swing something the other way.
And that's what we're going to be looking for today, because as one is sort of analyzing it and looking at it, there could be at least 30 charges that are put towards former President Donald Trump. And one of those could be felony. Now, that's the big charge to look out for. Perhaps you can talk us through this. If felony is amongst the charges, what does that mean for him?
Well, it would be a felony is definitionally is a criminal conviction. I mean, you did something that's in the statutes that's considered to be a crime, and you've been convicted of it. And let's understand what was going on today. Today is not the trial. Today is simply the arraignment. That is, you come before the judge, the charges are read, you get to plead guilty or not guilty. And in Trump's case, obviously, he's going to plead not, or his lawyers perhaps, plead not guilty to all charges. And that will have happened after they have taken the so-called mugshot, and after they have formally listed him as arrested. If he pleads not guilty, then the judge gets to decide on the basis of the pleadings of his lawyers and the prosecutor, should he be released, on his own recognizance, should he be remanded to custody, that is, put in jail temporarily until the trial, or should he be required to post bond? I suspect, because he's a fairly well-known fellow, it's kind of hard to see him absconding and going into hiding anywhere. I mean, he'll show up. But his lawyers are certainly going to argue that the charges are baseless, that the charges are politically motivated, that they may well even try to argue that the trial, when it comes up later on, should be held in a different venue, because New York City is unimaginably biased against him. The judge is biased against him, and so forth. Point of fact, the judge did preside over the trial that convicted his former chief financial officer of the Trump Organization business empire. And so, at least on the face of it, he will try to make that argument. And we'll see all this. It will take place very quickly, actually, a couple, 10, 15 minutes perhaps. Then he's planning to go back to Mar-a-Lago in Florida to hold a rally or a public speech this evening, U.S. time, which would be early in the morning, our time here. And then the pre-trial motions from the attorneys will begin. And once those are exhausted, then the trial itself will take place. Here we are in April. Perhaps we're not looking for the trial until May or June even.
Yeah, very interesting. But I just want to ask you before I let you go, obviously no cameras are allowed in this. I mean, you talk about the infamous mugshot, whether or not that's going to happen or not, we don't know. We know he's not going to be handcuffed. None of that is going to be happening. But obviously the big question people are also looking for is, will he get more charges added to this. The possible charges including the alleged tax evasion and, of course, his role, which you did mention, in the January 6, 2021 riots at the Washington Capitol. Do you expect more charges to be added to this?
Well, each of the cases that I mentioned are separate and independent from this particular case, and the prosecuting attorneys are not going to be coordinating their approaches, so that while this is going on, it is likely then that the case in Georgia, which is a separate jurisdiction, obviously, that may finally come to the courts. And in the meantime, the investigations from the Department of Justice Special Prosecutor will move forward, and there may well be charges there as well. But they won't be added directly to the charges he's facing in New York City, because those are being brought by a city district attorney rather than a federal official or federal charges per se. And we should look forward to these all being, at some point in time, overlapping. Sort of visualize a television screen that's cut into 4 quarters, and each of them is a separate issue that is moving forward, and every once in a while something happens and we see that, and then something else happens in another one and we see that one, and so forth. It's going to be a very exciting legal summer for the United States, if nothing else.
Indeed, and something that could go on for at least a year is what people are expecting.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so we will speak to you more. Brooks, we will speak to you again, but this is just ahead of what's expected today, and that'll be happening obviously a bit later on for us South African time, and we'll be following that closely. Brooks Spector, thank you. Thanks for talking to us. Daily Maverick's associate editor, talking to us about what we can expect to happen when the US former President Donald Trump appears in a New York courthouse later today to face criminal charges.